Now, there's also another election this year. The election takes place the same day, and that's the U.S. Senate race. The big question is Mary Landrieu, whether or not she's able to win the fourth term. Something that Edwards said, and I actually wrote a column about this. It's up on Bayoubuzz right now. He said that when asked about Obamacare, he called it whether or not you can keep your own doctor in your own policy. He called it the lie of the decade, and I seized on that and said, well, I don't think Mary really wanted to hear that, although he was very supportive of the Obamacare on other issues, such as pre-existing conditions, the portability aspect of it. So I'm just wondering whether or not Edwards is going to be a positive or negative or just a wash in Landrieu campaign and vice versa.
Well, go ahead, Tyler. You want to start off?
I would just say, we can't say definitively. I think we can say that the argument in favor of Edwards helping Mary Landrieu is that he is a Democrat, and he's a guy who will probably bring out voters, probably especially African-American voters that no other Democrat on the ballot in that 6th congressional district would do. So that's the argument, that he will help Mary Landrieu, and particularly in the runoff, because I think it's fair to assume that Edwards would make the runoff. The counter-argument is that there are people out there who don't like him and would be reminded of the reasons they don't like him, and that might draw some people to the polls who would vote against Edwards and then also vote against Mary Landrieu.
I would think, and I agree with Tyler on that, I think Edwards helps Mary Landrieu by generating more people getting to the polls. Unless something very dramatic happens, there are runoffs in both these races. Mary Landrieu cannot win this race in the first primary. So assuming they're both in a runoff, it's going to be harder to get people to the polls. I think they help each other in their effort to turn out a vote, an African-American vote, traditional Democratic vote, as Tyler stated. So I don't think anything off Edwards is going to affect Mary Landrieu. Mary Landrieu has been pretty well defined, and she's going to be pounded for months to come over Obamacare. And it's interesting that Edwards says what a terrible lie it is, and Mary Landrieu keeps defending it. She's got that wrapped around her neck. She's got the president, and she's got the Obamacare issue wrapped around her neck. So she's not going to be hurt by Edwards on the ballot. I think he's going to help her get out that traditional vote. She's got an uphill fight. I was looking at some numbers this morning earlier, Steve, about confidence in the country. What party do you have the most confidence in? Generally, you go back over the last 20 years, it's about 40-40, Democrat, Republican, maybe a little higher one or the other. The confidence in the Democrats solving problems under the leadership of Barack Obama, and the poll I saw today, respected poll, was about 24%. When you're down that low, then there are some independent voters who are going to say, look, I don't care what she's done. We just got to have a change in this direction for this country. And so Mary Landrieu carries that albatross around her neck of that feeling to a number of voters. Obamacare, the president's unpopularity, of which she's been an ardent defender, and I don't think this stuff about being a committee chairman or anything along that line really carries that much weight. So she's going to have an awful lot of money to solve her problem, and it's going to be a real barn burner. By the way, a little inside gossip for you. Mary had a fundraiser last night down in New Orleans. Carole King came, the singer Carole King. There were 100 people, paid $1,000 each, and it was a private home down in New Orleans. Apparently went very, very well. So if you're a Carole King fan, she's locked on to Mary Landrieu for whatever the rumor monitor is worth.
You know, I have a real question there, and you mentioned that the Democrats are down in the low 20s. Well, the Republicans, from what I understand, are down lower than that. Unless it's a different poll, the Republicans were in the teens.
This is members of Congress. I didn't see that in terms of do you have confidence in terms of who can lead the country. When you're down to 24%, traditionally you going back over the last 50 years, you can rise maybe 15% above that, but getting to 50%, that can really affect other elections is just a very hard road to knock. So, so in any event, and Landrieu, she's got the office. You know, she's the issue. The issue probably is not going to be Bill Cassidy's a nice guy, a doctor, and you know, got a sweet wife who's a doctor, and you're not going to be voting, though, quite frankly, for Bill Cassidy. You're going to go into that voting box and make a referendum on Mary Landrieu, either for or against her, and in my opinion, that's what's going to be the decisive factor in the election.